So President Trump has taken steps to dismantle the Department of Education. And this is a move that he's made to slim down the federal government and also to decrease the government's role in education, returning power back to the schools. Now, this has both been praised and criticized, so let's take a look at the reality of it. You're listening to Uncle Sam Saves America. I'm Uncle Sam. Ever since the Department of Education was created in the 70s, 1979, there's been political tensions. There's an idea of local versus federal control. Many critics see that the Department of Education as a federal overreach into what had been traditionally state and local authorities, and that tension has persisted from its creation up until today. And Trump's push is to return everything to a pre-Carter model, and basically effectively demoting education from cabinet status and returning its power back to the states. And that's going to require Congress, of course, to approve of everything, because as the statute was created and passed into Congress, it'll take that type of vote to remove it. And so there's going to be a battle ahead, because the left and their socialist Marxist ideology of bigger government is going to be diametrically in opposition to this. So that battle is coming. But I'm of the opinion that the Department of Education and all of its equity mandates are the reason why society has had such a downturn, and there's been many problems that we face today. Right? Standardized testing removed excellence. Standardized testing elevated lower achievers, and it held back higher achievers. And what that has done is it's created a stagnation and a stagnant pool of what people learn. And teachers started teaching to the test rather than actually teaching kids to expand and brighten their mind. Grading curves did the same thing. They removed excellence, and they, of course, it rose the level of those who fall behind, but at the expense of those who are higher achievers. Loss of vocational education, push towards college prep, removed the idea of people learning skilled trades and mastery over a task, over a trade. And that left many of the lower achieving students without options, and many of the lower income students without options. Vocational was essential to America, and it still is, especially if we're to return manufacturing back to America. The STEM emphasis was valuable, especially when it comes to things like AI and where the world is going as far as tech and everything is concerned. But that came at the expense of civic education, and it came at the expense of arts, it came at the expense of everything. And if you combine that with the loss of vocational education, right, the result has been a country now that has fewer and fewer tradesmen, and which created an increasing dependence on outside manufacturing. Student loans out of control, union influence has pushed DEI, and they've gained leverage over the curriculum and policies that often clashes with what local communities need, as well as what parental rights and parents want for their children to learn. Small towns have declined because of this. The push has been to get students off to major universities rather than going to community colleges, and oftentimes, more often than not, students from small towns don't come back home, and the community doesn't get to reap that advancement avenue. In Washington, it's basically become the Department of Education dictates to communities what needs to be done, and the communities are expected to adapt to that, which is in direct opposition to what the Republic and the Constitution stand for, where the government is supposed to respond to the needs of the community, not vice versa. Equity mandates. Equity has always been framed as a moral justification, and the Department of Education has always ran with that. They claim it's to ensure equal access regardless of race and income and geography, and that's all fine and well. But it's also where meritocracy took its shot in the heart, a fatal wound, right? Because meritocracy these days is completely ignored. Meritocracy had the promise that if you put in the effort, you learn the skills, you gain the knowledge, that you could determine your own advancement. And it was once the backbone of American education. Hard work, get out there, do your job, prove yourself, and you could advance, you could rise. But equity mandates have changed that, right? It's been more of a shift to equal outcome rather than equal opportunity. Once again, holding the higher achievers back. And the school system, with their DEI mandates, have made a shift from citizen building into statistical engineering, right? The ability to reward excellence was lost. And the government began to tell us what success was supposed to look like. Once again, small towns suffered because of that. Where they once measured success by a person's service, the contribution they made, their craft, their loyalty to the community, that's all been hollowed out. And it's not without design, right? There's a Marxist lean in this. Cultural Marxism, which we all know has taken over education. It focuses on class struggle, oppression of the disadvantaged, and redistribution of wealth, and everything to parity, to a statistic. If you apply that to education, those who have feelings of oppression become more important than those who are high achievers, who actually become treated as if they are the oppressor, right? Excellence is punished, so they don't have ambition anymore, right? And the cultural message that we put out there is for people to not stand out, right? Don't stand out. No longer encouraged to set the example, right? Just keep your head down and you won't get labeled, and everything will run smoothly in your life. The creation and expansion of the United States Department of Education created a centralized authority over schooling, which has repeatedly crashed with parental rights. Federal mandates and equity-driven policies often override local control, creating situations where parents lose influence over the curriculum and over the privacy and over decision-making and things that happen with their own children. Court cases and federal directives, they show a clear line that the more the Department of Education asserts its authority, the more parental rights become constrained. In 1923 and in 1925, the U.S. Supreme Court established that parents have fundamental rights to direct their children's education. In 1974 and in 1978, there were a couple of acts passed, links will be down below, that were meant to protect parents' access to records and opt-out rights. But once the Department of Education took control, enforcement of that became non-existent. And today you have laws out in California where parents have no rights. They can go and change the gender of your child, and if you try to stand in the way, you are an oppressor. You are a bigot, and we're going to take your children away from you because you are a danger to them. That is the shift that has happened, and the Department of Education has certainly played its role within that. More modern flashpoints like that, you have the curriculum battles, right? Each state wants to teach the curriculums that are important to their various geographic area based off of what their industries are. Not based off of what race is, not based off of what religion you are, not based off of whether you're rich or poor, but based off the resources that are in the area. And if you can keep students in their area, if you can get them to community college, if you can get them educated through a way that helps improve the community, then the nation as a whole grows and it prospers. But when you force feed one way to them, you stunt the growth. Right? Prior to Department of Education, parental rights were upheld by courts as fundamental liberties. But after the Department of Education, federal mandates, funding, equity, civil rights movements, all of that kind of stuff, they overrode the local autonomy of that. In the modern era, today, parents, they find out that schools are hiding information from them. They're enforcing curriculums against their wishes. And if a parent wants to remove a child from a DEI program, they no longer, in some places, have that authority to do so. The system gets to dictate that for them. And this is all Frankfurt Marxist ideologies, right? The Frankfurt School looked to deconstruct the family because families were seen as authoritarian, right? This idea filtered on into our culture through universities. And after World War II, it began influencing education and sociology and cultural policy, right? The National Education Agency has been complicit in bringing that down the line into K through 12, often prioritizing equity and inclusion and systemic critique over local parental control. Systemic critique. That means that they will criticize your kids. They will bully your kids. They will shame your kids into making them follow that ideology rather than what you're trying to teach your kids at home. If you're trying to teach your kids to be a good citizen, to contribute to society, to work hard, and to build something for themselves in the future, the teachers are teaching direct opposition to that. This is cultural consequences, right? It's resulted in poor grades. It's resulted in a lack of accountability. Juvenile justice, they need reforms, right? The school discipline policies need reforms because they prioritize how these kids feel over them instead of them taking responsibility for their actions. They allow them to be victims rather than teaching them how to overcome. They allow them to wallow in their own disapproval of their own lives. Kids also have hormonal rebellion. Adolescents are naturally going to test boundaries without the accountability of the parental guidance and the family unit. It's been sidelined. And the state-driven schools and the union-driven curriculum and all of this has set children up to fail. And it's not, like I said, without design. The fatal inversion here is meritocracy has been punished and equity has been rewarded. Parents have been sidelined and bureaucrats have been empowered, while the family's been deconstructed and the state system has been constructed in its place. The result of this is a generation or a generation and a half now that is raised in a culture where accountability is optional, rebellion is normalized, and if you try to succeed, you're a suspected oppressor. The bottom line in all this is the correlation here. The Frankfurt School, National Education Agency, Department of Education, the cultural decay and unaccountability and rebellion of our youth. Because of all of this, particularly weakening of parental rights, we have increases in child-on-child violence, child-on-adult violence, adult criminals recruiting and grooming children to be criminals, increases in gun violence, increases in school shootings, and this is the decay that the Marxists have dreamed of. You're listening to Uncle Sam Saves America. I'm Uncle Sam.